Hi everybody, my name is Shellie Zeigler and I'm a library consultant here at the Mississippi Library Commission. And I am going to be talking today about adult programming for the summer library program. Um, I have a deep passion for adult programming and adult services. I also have a history of working in adult programming in public libraries. So these kind of lend themselves to why I like to talk about it. Okay, so this year the theme is Imagine Your Story. Um, what I love about the summer library program themes is that you can use them to encompass a lot of different aspects depending on what works in your community. For this presentation, I'm going to focus on mythology, fantasy, folk tales, and a little bit about fairy tales. I do want to say before I get going that when there will be a lot of discussion of other cultures' beliefs and their origin stories and beliefs, it is important to recognize that there might be stories or beliefs that we perceive as just that, a story or a myth. In actuality, it is a part of their culture's origin stories, and to them it's not fake, it's not made up, it's what's made them who they are and how they believe. Different cultures have different belief systems, and this difference should never be assigned a value of right or wrong. So I just like to say that from the get-go, that it's very important because we can get into some touchy origin stories that we should not put our own take on it as it's wrong or it's not true. So what I thought about when I was thinking about these themes is I just thought about storytelling. I start with storytelling because I feel it lends itself well to the theme of mythology, fantasy, folk tales. Storytelling brings ideas to life. I think that a lot of programmers sometimes find it hard to find storytellers. And also, it's hard to find the money in your budget as well sometimes. So you can hire storytellers, and you also might have some great storytellers on your staff or even your friends group. So don't rule out the people that are right there in front of your face that might be really good at presenting a program and doing some storytelling. I will talk a little bit on the next slide about how to find some storytellers if you do want to hire. I also want to say here that it's not always possible, but it's always ideal to have the storyteller be part of the culture that they are speaking about. That lends itself back to that cultural sensitivity. So finding a storyteller. There is a national storytelling network, and I have a link on here to it. However, when I searched this for our state of Mississippi, I saw that there were only 2 people listed in the storytelling network. So that isn't the most wonderful resource for us if you are wanting to hire someone who's local. I do know that there are some libraries this summer that are getting a storyteller from out of state, I believe Oklahoma. And I used to live there, so I actually know the storyteller. But so if you have the funding for that, it's great. But if you don't, you want to stick with someone who is local. The Humanities Council Speakers Bureau have a link there for that as well. Go to that and check that out and see what you can find there, because I believe there'll be a lot of good resources there as well. And not only storytellers as well. I mean, you'll find a lot of fantastic resources. The third thing you can do, and this might seem very obvious, but sometimes you have to state the obvious, is ask other librarians. Ask other librarians that not only in your library system, but in other library systems. I want to do, I want to do a Native American story. Do you know the Native American storytellers? What have you used in the past? What have you done in the past? I'm also going to be talking a little bit later about joining Facebook groups to connect with other librarians across the entire country. And that's going to give you a lot of good connections. And also, not to plug this, but ask your MLC consultant, because we interact with a lot of libraries and we hear about a lot of programming, and we might know of an option for you or an idea for you for a storyteller that you may not be aware of. And then one more thing I don't have on the slide, but it never hurts to try your local community college, university, because a lot of times professors and academics, they are sometimes required to go out and do some community service. And if they're not required, it just really looks good for them to do that. And so you could have what they call bringing in a scholar. You could bring in a scholar on a certain subject or a certain culture, and then have them talk about that. They may not be the greatest storytellers, but they are a good resource for information. Here I have a few storytelling resources that are just good for inspiration and ideas. I tried to pick 3 books that were really different. The folk and fairy tale book, I believe that's kind of your run-of-the-mill, I don't want to say generic, but folk and fairy tales that we've heard in American culture. Then I have folk tales from India, and this book has gotten a lot of good attention, so you might want to check this out. And then this Nordic Tales book, first of all, it's beautiful. And it's really got some different tales that other people may have never heard of. So, so these are just some 3 resources for inspiration to kind of get your brain going on what kind of storytelling you want to offer to your community, and what kind of storytellers you might want to bring in or find, again, locally, maybe in your own staff. I have included a family programming here. I know this is about adult programming, but sometimes let's face it, it's hard to get adults to come to the library. Not always. I always say that, but it's not always true, but it tends to be, from the librarians I interact with, a struggle, and I feel like that's why there's typically not a lot of adult programming offered overall. But here's an example of a family program. So if you have a parent or parents that come to a lot of your children's programming, so you already have them coming to the library for that type of programming. If you offer a family program, this is a good way to get them to come in and see that maybe there are programs at the library that would appeal to me as well. And it's easy if they bring their child, because then they don't have to worry about childcare and things of that nature, because a lot of adult programming occurs maybe after 5. There are some that have like noonday book clubs and things like that, but anyway, so this is an example of a family program, and I took this book called Whiskers, Tails, and Wings, and it's about animal folk tales from Mexico. and it's folk tales from 5 different tribes in Mexico. So this would be a program where a story could be told, and then you should share information about the tribe. So not only should it be an entertaining aspect, but there should be an educational aspect, telling the tribe where they're from, what their beliefs are. And what I like about this book is that each story is followed by information about that culture. So you'll have the information about the culture to share right there. So I think that's really, really cool. So we've got Japanese, I have it called Monster Oni, but a lot of times it's just called Oni mask. But Oni masks are commonly associated with the Japanese culture. Oni is just one type of mask that is often used in performances, classical performances. So you, if you just look on the internet, I hate to say just Google it, but there's nothing wrong with Google. But if you do Google Japanese mask, you'll see that Oni is just one form. It's just one that I picked here for this example. An Oni mask is a type of mask, and it typically represents a devil type figure. What would be a really cool program, I think, is if you had a speaker come in to talk about Japanese culture, and they can incorporate Japanese masks and how they were used, and then have adults make their own Oni masks. Adults like crafts too. I say this in all of my adult programming presentations, but I feel like sometimes that's forgotten, that adults like to do crafts too. It's not just for the young kids. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about Dreamcatchers. Most everybody knows about Dreamcatchers. They're very popular in American culture even. You'll see them a lot on keychains and, of course, above people's beds. And but this is a program that could be an adult, family, or a teen program as well. I have a link here of, it's an example of how to make a Dreamcatcher. There's a lot of other examples out there. What I like about this is that it's relatively inexpensive. I think the one that is on this screen is a paper plate, but there's all these beads, and you can buy feathers, and people can color them, and it brings out their imagination. And then it's important to also, if you do this program, to have someone enhance the experience and talk about the Native American culture and what actually the Dreamcatcher, what the origins of a Dreamcatcher is. So not just to be like, hey, we're going to make a Dreamcatcher. They have the educational element to it as well. Now we have to talk about gnomes. I just feel like it's a great time to add some gnome fun in here. Gnomes are part of fantasy stories and literature. I like to think, and I'm partial, I will say that, I like to think that everyone loves a gnome. I could be wrong, but just seems like because they're so popular, you see them everywhere, every little gift store, Target, Walmart. There's like a gnome for every season. But you could do a gnome program for your summer library programming. This is just a little history about gnomes in case you are interested. They have a really fascinating history, I think. They originated in Germany in the early 1800s, and of course they were made out of clay, not plastic like they are now. And then they started appearing in gardens in England about in the 1840s. And then their popularity took off after that. I think that's when they made it over to the States. Gnomes, like I said, are super popular today. I think if you do a gnome program, you will get great attendance. I heard somewhere, and this is, I'm not sure if this is fact, but this is what I heard, and I just think this is interesting. I heard that gnomes from Germany that are made in Germany have green hats. while American versions of the gnome tend to have red hats. And I'm not sure if that's true, but I will say that my mother went to Germany not too long ago, and she got me a gnome, and it indeed had a green hat. I don't know if it was, just special, but I don't know. I just thought that was interesting that I'd heard that. And then I got a German gnome, and it had a green hat. So anyway, a little more about gnomes is here are some links to, and I know it's a little hard to see. I just realized that it's a little hard to see some of those links, but if you click on them, they should work. Tutorials on easy gnome crafts. There's so many out there. I really like the one with recycling your K-cups. I always feel bad about all the plastic that I am throwing away from all my K-cups. So maybe really look into that K-cup gnome, and then you could be doing something for your environment. In a little bit, I'm going to talk, actually, I think it's the next slide, I'm going to talk about gnome and fairy gardens. You could possibly use some of these links or any others that you find, and you can make little gnomes to put in your gnome and fairy gardens. So you can kind of pull two crafts together. But, and on with that, gnome and fairy garden. So I've got 3 pictures here of some examples, and they're cutie patootie. They are fun to do. I mean, I think they'll be fun to do. I haven't made one yet, but I really want to now after doing some research for this presentation. And if you have a gnome and fairy garden program at your library, I would love it if you would let me know, because I might come. Because I would really like to make one. What they are is they are easy pot-contained mini gardens. They typically include succulents, and I will tell you that succulents are very easy to take care of. It's hard to kill a succulent. You just have, if you just never water it, I think it will eventually die, but they're very durable. But so they usually include succulents and small items like little mini houses, twigs, and stones. And you're probably thinking, okay, there's this one picture, and they have little dogs in there, and they have a little water cooler for the dog. I don't know where to get that. Well, I'm going to tell you, and I'm going to tell you how to find the little mini houses too, and for relatively cheap. So, and that's always a good thing. So, here we go. How do you make a fairy gnome garden? Well, there is no wrong way. Let's just put it that way. And I have a couple of links for you on how to make that particular fairy gnome garden. But what I love about this, again, is that you have this for a program. Everyone's garden is going to be vastly different based on their personality. So it'll probably be interesting to see how they turn out. But basically, all you need are very small planters or glass bowls. Twigs and moss is nice. Rocks of different sizes. Little bitty succulents. Potting soil. I mean, you can get a big bag of soil for nothing, and that would fill up many little fairy gnome gardens. And then I have a variety of cute, tiny objects. When I go into the Dollar Tree, which is one of my favorite places, and I'm not a big crafter, I just really think they have a lot of great things for $1. There's this one aisle, I guess it's their crafting aisle, but they've got such cute little, I mean, like the little houses, little trays. One time I saw little rocking chairs. I don't know. To me, those things would be perfect in your fairy gnome garden. So the Dollar Tree, as I said here, is your friend at this point. So if you're thinking about doing this for summer reading, I would start looking at your Dollar Trees now and getting as much stuff as you can. Let's see. And it's a very easy program because you're not telling people how to do things step by step. I mean, you tell them, how to put the potting soil in and put some succulents in. I was trying to think of some places to get little mini succulents. I know that you can always go to Home Depot and like you can get these just like one little succulent in a very small container for next to nothing. So Home Depot is one that I was thinking of. Sometimes Kroger will have them as well. I can't think of any other off the top of my head, but if you're having trouble finding them, you can email me and I'll see if I can find some other stores maybe in your area that might carry little succulents. Succulents are real popular right now, and they have been for a few years, so they're not difficult to find, but you want to find like the little bitty mini ones, just because they're cheaper and because you don't want some big one taking up your whole fairy gnome garden. So here we go. All right, I'm gonna stop talking about gnomes and fairies now. And we'll talk about movies. Movies are it's a very popular program. It's people tend to show a lot of movies during the summer. The thing I always say in my presentations is to be sure that you have a current public performance rights movie license and to make sure that it covers the movie that you're showing. So let's see here. I have some movie ideas. Again, these are just ideas that I thought would fit the theme. You need to check and see if they are covered by your public performance license. If you want to do a Disney movie, you don't want to be like the library that was fined a great amount. Well, I don't know how much it was, but it seemed like it was a lot for showing a Disney movie. You don't want to get in trouble with Disney. So some that I think would go over well is The Princess Bride. It's a book, but it's also one of those anomalies where the movie to me is not better than the book, but just as good as the book. But that's just my personal opinion. Edward Scissorhands. And I try to pick movies that would appeal to adults. These aren't movies necessarily for small children at all. They probably couldn't follow some of the storyline. They might be a little darker. So these are geared more towards older teens and adults. However, Willow is an old movie. I don't even know, maybe it's from the late 80s. And it might appeal to all ages. And I love that one, so I had to put that in there. The Brothers Grimm would be a good one. I did put in Pan's Labyrinth. Now, I think this would be a good one for adults. It is subtitled. Some people, it's in Spanish. Some people don't do subtitles. Subtitles are my friend. I watch them all the time. For anything, I subtitle everything because I can't understand what people are saying on television or in a movie. But Pan's Labyrinth came out in the 2000s, 2005, 2006. It is a dark fantasy. It's set in Spain. The storyline is for adults. I'll just say it. And I believe it might be rated R. So that might be for your library system a no-go. But it might not be. It might work for you guys. I just really wanted to talk about it because it's a it's a good adult film. I think it's rated R for the violence. There's some violence in it, and there's some real scary scenes in it. It's one of my favorite movies, so I had to talk about it on here. So there's some movie ideas. Let's see. Okay, I promised you I was going to talk about how to do some interacting with other librarians and get ideas. So you can join some Facebook groups. Facebook groups are a great way to interact with other librarians and get ideas. And also to don't only get ideas, but also share what you've done so you can help other people as well. The first one, the Dollar Tree Crafting Group. This is not aimed at librarians, I will say that. It's aimed at people who love taking stuff from Dollar Tree and crafting it into these, you'll go look at it if you have a chance, into these amazing things that do not look like they come from the Dollar Tree. I mean, I am blown away by some of these crafters. So they have a lot of good, cheap ideas here that you'll be able to find some things to apply to your programs. So like I said, it's not aimed at librarians, but it's very helpful for librarians. Programming Librarian Interest Group. That is probably, of the ones I have listed here, is the most popular. There's about 15,000 members, and it is supported by ALA. There's great ideas to find performers here, and much more. Just tons of programming ideas. I strongly encourage, if you're on Facebook, to join the Programming Librarian Interest Group. These are private groups, I'll say that, so you will have to, I forgot what it looks like, but you click on it to join. And I don't think they ask you any questions. I just think, I don't know how they approve people in it, but I got in it, so I'm sure anybody else can. The grown up table, that one, I joined it and I have a lot of hope for it, but there doesn't seem to be a lot of regular activity on it. It doesn't mean it's not a good resource. It's just not as popular as the other one. And then Library Programming, Inspiration and Best Practices for Public Libraries. This one also is not near as active, but the content and what people share on there is really good. So I really recommend you join that one. And then the Programming for Beginners, that's well, that says it all. I don't even think it's for beginners. I think anyone would benefit from that one. So I just wanted to give you guys some good ways that you can interact with other librarians in an easy format. You know, how much easier is it than Facebook? There's a Facebook group for just about anything. Just kind of scary, but here are some good ones that you all might want to join. All right, and then I'm going to talk about book clubs. I always talk about book clubs. I think they're very relevant. I think that some library systems have a very strong following for their book clubs. Some struggle with them, but I don't ever want to give up on them because I love a book club. I'm in a book club. I have been for about 7 years now. We've had our ups and downs. We've had some, we had many members at once, and then we had just 2 members, and it's a ever evolving entity. But a couple of the books I want to really highlight here that I think would be great book club books. I have The Princess Bride on here because I know I mentioned the movie, but it is such a classic fairy tale, but very different. If you haven't read it, I don't want to say too much. It has a lot of humor in it and some tongue-in-cheek things, but it's such a great book overall. even if you don't want to have it for your book club, you might want to read this. So I'm gonna have to plug The Princess Bride. Another one that I think a lot of people, I think it flew under the radar, is called Last Call at the Nightshade Lounge. This is an urban fantasy. It's where demons are real and liquor is magic, which I think is great. I think this is good for people if you liked Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and it's a good adult version. It's not a version of Harry Potter, but it would be like if you really liked Harry Potter, this would be a good adult step up a bit because of the magic and demons. And then I'm going to talk about the Golem and the Genie, one of my all-time favorites. First of all, the cover is beautiful. I did not put it on this slide, but I should have. So a golem is a clay creature brought to life. And this book is so interesting because it's got so many elements. It's historical fiction. It's set in New York in 1899. And the golem and the genie meet, and they happen to get stuck in New York. And I don't want to tell too much, but they have to hide who they are. And so they start living there, and they become friends with this group of immigrants. But of course, it's not all happy. Bad things happen, and they have to fight and defend themselves. Anyway, it's really good. And it's more than good. It really fits in with the theme this year, and it's definitely geared towards adults as well. And then the picture you see here on this slide, the bear and the nightingale. When I started this, when I read this book, when it very first came out, I didn't realize it was going to be in a trilogy. So, but it is, and I think the second one has come out. I don't remember the name of it. I haven't read the second one yet. So this is the first in a series, and sometimes people don't like to read series. Sometimes people they love series, and that's all they want to read. But either way, you can read this as a standalone. It's the first one. It reads like a Russian fairy tale, and an easy to read Russian fairy tale. There's all these great components. There's an evil stepmother. There's this cool demon named Frost. It's really scary. There's a lot in here of fighting for what's right. I just feel like all the elements are here for a great book club, talk about how people feel about a lot of things in society. So I really want to plug The Bear and the Nightingale. And then I always like to talk about book displays. You could always do displays on magic, fantasy, mythology, fables, folktales, and there's all kinds of resources out there to find some that have been done already, but I think it's pretty easy to come up with some ideas. There's a lot of artistic people out there in Mississippi, and you guys do. I'm always amazed when I go into libraries and I see some of these displays. You blow me away. But I thought maybe another way to use the theme is to, you could highlight information about other cultures and countries. So this one I found here is called Read Around the World. And it's a real busy display. I won't lie, it's got a lot to it. But I think that would be a neat display where you're not only doing magic, fantasy, fairy tales, that you're focusing on other cultures and books that are popular in those countries, and maybe just some information about those countries as well. Here are just a list of some books that I have referenced in this webinar. I'm not going to talk about each one individually because I I've already talked about most of them. I did list a couple of gnome books there at the bottom in case you're interested. Um, but if you want to obtain some of these for your collection, I did include the ISBN there for you. And that is what I have for you today. If I can clarify any information, or if you need some more ideas on performers, or if you need some more ideas on book lists, I would be happy to help. You've got my phone number there, and then that's my email address. So I hope you all have a great summer reading program, and I really look forward to seeing them not only in person but also on